Hello everybody. Today we are discussing Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being. This is the 30th book we are reading together and makes me so happy to see that number coming up every month. So we'll see a little bit about the author, his awards and recognition, about the novel, the historical context behind it, a little bit about his writing style, the important themes, the philosophical themes behind the book, and some quotes from the book. So Milan Kundera is a Czech and French novelist. So he was born in 1929 to a middle-class family in Czechoslovakia. His father is a musicologist and pianist. His mother was an educator. At the age of 18, he joined the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia in 1947. And in 84, when he recalled about those days, he said that communism captivated me as much as Stravinsky, Picasso, and Surrealism. So he had a very strong arts background. He did his musicology course, but later on he went to study film at the Film and TV School of the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague, and in 1950 he was expelled from the Communist Party because of his writings. So Kundera was readmitted in the Communist Party in 1956, but his desire for reform continued. He didn't want to continue in the same way in which the Communist Party was going. He felt that there should be changes. So he participated in the protests of Prague Spring in 1968, and an event which is also mentioned in The Unbearable Lightness of Being. And he was again expelled from the party and dismissed from his job. So he was actually a lecturer in world literature in 1952 because of the Warsaw Pact invasion of Czechoslovakia in 68, which was when he also participated in the protests. He lost his job at the as a film faculty. And so another thing which happened was his first novel, The Joke, had come out in 67, which kind of ridiculed the Czech Communist Party. And this was just prior to the period of the Prague Spring, which was there was more political freedom at that time in Czechoslovakia. But after the Prague Spring, when the Soviet troops occupied the country, his book was banned. And he himself was, of course, as I just told you, he was fired from his position. And that is when he shifted to France and he acquired his citizenship in 81. And his Czechoslovak citizenship was revoked in 79. But later in 2019, just when he was about 90 years of age, they gave his citizenship back to him. So the period, how he got his French citizenship is also very interesting. So 68, after his books were banned by the government, he made his first journey to Paris, where he befriended his publisher, Claude Gallimard. At that time, Gallimard was the person who kept encouraging Kundera to immigrate to France. And he also smuggled the manuscript of Life is Elsewhere out of Czechoslovakia and took it to France. So finally, with the support of his publisher only, he moved to France in 1975. He continued lecturing when he was in France at the University of Rennes for a few years. And then he moved over to Paris. And after moving to France, Kundera has lived a very quiet and a guarded life in Paris. And even whenever, he has visited Czechoslovakia or he has had his Czech friends visit him in France, it's all been very low-key and there's been no media coverage or anything. He's lived a very quiet life after that. He won a lot of awards and recognition, the Jerusalem Prize in 85 and all the list of awards which I mentioned here. He was also, there was this thing that he was also in the run for the Nobel Prize for Literature, but he didn't win it in that particular year. Another interesting thing was in 1983, an asteroid was discovered in the Klet Observatory in Czech Republic, and it was named as 7390 Kundera after Milan Kundera. In 2008, this is like when he was nearly 80 years of age, he was accused of informing on a fellow Czech to the secret police in the 1950s when he was a student in the university. So this was a Czechoslovakian citizen who had secretly entered the university without the police's knowledge, and he was hiding over there. And it said that Kundera was also in the same hostel, and he had divulged this to the secret police. This person's, hiding in the university hostel. After which he was arrested, and this person was imprisoned for about 22 years or something and all that stuff happened, which was a newspaper had covered this and published it and all. And in the police record, it's mentioned that the person who was an informer was Milan Kundera. But the student ID number is not mentioned, which is a usual case in the secret police of that time. They would always mention the ID number so that a wrong person, doesn't give a wrong name and try to pass off as another. So since in this particular report, its name is given, but the student number is not given, finally the case was in favor of Kundera, and they said, no, he couldn't have done it. There's not enough proof to show that. In this scenario, he won the support of many fellow writers. Some of the notable ones are Salman Rushdie and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. All of them supported and publicly supported Kundera during this period. The Unbearable Lightness of Being is Kundera's best-known novel. The story mainly takes place in Prague in the late 1960s and early 1970s. It explores the artistic and intellectual life of Czech society from the Prague Spring of '68 to the invasion of Czechoslovakia by the Soviet Union and 3 other Warsaw Pact countries and its aftermath through the lives of 2 separate pairs of people and those around them. The book was published in 1984. It's a philosophical fiction, and an interesting thing about it is how it has 2 different points of view. You have the third person omniscient point of view and the first person omniscient point of view, which makes it sometimes a little funny read and a very different read too. The Unbearable Lightness of Being was also made as a film in 1988. It was an American-made adaptation starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Lena Olin, and Juliette Binoche. It was directed by Philip Kaufman. So actually, in a note to the Czech edition of the book, Kundera remarks that the movie had very little to do with the spirit either of the novel or the characters in it. And he went on to say that he will no longer allow any adaptation of his work. But what is very interesting is Kundera himself was a part of the crew who was involved in the adaptation of the book. But I think he found it very difficult to pull it off as a film, what he did in a novel. So the Unbearable Lightness of Being, the historical context behind it is that it takes place before, during, and after the Prague Spring, which is a period of mass protest against Czechoslovakia as a communist state after the World War II. So the Prague Spring officially begins in January 1968 with the election of Alexander Dubček as the first secretary of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia. So till then, the Communist Party is having its hold on Czechoslovakia, and it's always had these rigid rules as always. But Alexander Dubček was a very different person. He was a reformist, and under his leadership, a lot of media censorship was lifted and the people were given more freedom and liberty. But this was very near and just after the Hungarian, revolt and the Communist Party's invasion of Hungary. So the states around Soviet Union felt that if Soviet Union does not interfere in Czechoslovakian politics at this moment, then all the other states, the people of all the other states are also going to demand for such freedoms. So they felt it might be good to have this invasion so that the message is clear. But the invasion wasn't, it was more of a peaceful invasion, though sometimes when you read on Wikipedia or other places, it looks like a very massive, horrible thing. But compared to what was happening and what had just happened in Hungary and other places, in Hungary especially, the invasion in Czechoslovakia wasn't as bad as that. But of course, the people were affected. So Dubček's reform gained the negative attention of the Soviet Union, who worried that Czechoslovakia was becoming too westernized. So the Prague Spring lasted till August 1968, at which time Soviet Union sent about 650,000 armed troops and tanks to occupy Czechoslovakia. So the Russian occupation, which was meant to last only for a few days, actually went on for 8 months. The resistance was entirely civilian-based, and there was never any formal military engagement, actually. But still, it's said that about 82 Czechoslovakian civilians were killed during the resistance to the Russian occupation. And Soviet Union had pulled out of Czechoslovakia by the spring of 1969. However, before that, there was a mass emigration with about nearly 300,000 Czechs leaving the nation by the end of the conflict. The Soviet Union remained in control of Czechoslovakia until 1989, at which time the communist regime ended and the country officially became Czech Republic. Okay, so should I just go ahead with shall we finish the existentialism part of it? Then maybe I'll continue. Okay, so let's do this portion of it, and then probably I'll stop the screen share and we can have a discussion.
Okay.
So some of the philosophical underpinnings behind this book was between essentialism and existentialism. So I read up a little bit about this, and I started watching some videos and started doing it. Then I think I went down a rabbit hole, so I decided to stop. So it's a huge field of study, but what little I understood, I tried to tell you about it. So when Aristotle and Plato were, as philosophers, had this concept of essentialism. So essentialism is where when a person is born, okay, I think I'll use the explanation which they gave in Crash Course. It was very interesting. So they say there is an essence to every object, every organism, every human being, everyone. So for instance, the example which was given is there are 2 knives. So it could be, a knife could have a wooden handle or it could have a metal handle. It doesn't make a difference. But a knife needs to have a blade. So if a knife doesn't have a blade, it is not a knife anymore. So the blade becomes the essence of a knife. It's what is essential for a knife to be a knife. If it doesn't have a blade, it has to be something else. It can't be a knife. So similarly, a human also has some essence which is stamped into him when he's born. And so what they try to say is there's a purpose to our existence which is already decided by God and given to us. And we are here on earth to fulfill that purpose. So this is basically the philosophy of essentialism. On the other hand, the philosophy of existentialism says that we are born on earth and we discover our purpose on earth through our actions. Our essence is what we decide our essence to be. And so I think this is the simplest way I can put it. I'm not sure. Maybe Shamal Raoji, you can correct me later on if there's more to this.
No issue. Okay.
So
I also read it. I took the definition of that. Let us proceed, madam. I'll find it.
Okay. So this is what I understood by essentialism and existentialism. And existentialism has these fantastic philosophers behind it. One of the interesting and one of the persons who's written in depth about is Friedrich Nietzsche. So Friedrich Nietzsche, I don't want to go totally in depth into it, but to just say it in a nutshell, Friedrich Nietzsche has this concept of eternal return. So that is basically where he says that everything in the universe recurs and repeats in a similar fashion over time and space. So Milan Kundera in the novel Unbearable Lightness of Being, he's tried to challenge this concept. He says that there's no principle of eternal return. So this is I would say this is where he tries to vary from the point of view of existentialism's general thought process, maybe. So at the center of Milan Kundera's The Unbearable Lightness of Being is the philosophical concept of eternal return. So which assumes that everything in the universe, people, animals, events, and the like, recurs and repeats in a more or less similar fashion over infinite time and space. The theory of eternal return has been around since antiquity, and it can be found in ancient Indian, Greek, and Egyptian writings. However, in modernity is most often associated with the 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, whom Kundera references directly in the novel. So Kundera uses his characters Thomas, Teresa, Sabina, and Franz to explore and refute the idea of eternal return, which he claims is a terrifying prospect. So if life and everything in it are on a continuous loop, Kundera asserts, then the weight of unbearable responsibility lies heavy on every move we make. But while Kundera points out the drawbacks of a cyclical existence, he also acknowledges its benefits. So happiness, according to Kundera, is the desire for repetition. Though Kundera dismisses the theory of eternal return, arguing that time and existence, especially human existence, are linear and occur only once, he asserts that a cyclical existence would be the key to true happiness. So when Thomas first meets Teresa, he thinks he may be in love, but isn't sure he wants to give up his bachelor lifestyle. So this indecisiveness, according to Kundera, is to be expected. We can never know what to want because living only one life, we can neither compare it with our previous lives nor perfect it in our lives to come. So in other words, existence does not repeat on a continuous loop in which one can compare and contrast decisions. It only occurs once. So this is also a base of existentialism where so it says that certain decisions are, you can never say whether it's right or it's wrong. Whatever you do is what you stand by. So that's also one of the tenet of existentialism. So Kundera posits that life is like a sort of sketch because people live everything as it comes without warning. Yet he claims it is not an outline or groundwork for something. Instead, Kundera argues that life is a sketch for nothing, an outline with no picture. The conflict will never recur, Kundera writes, but the magazine isn't interested because the pictures are out of date. So we see some of the examples of this where he tries to show that recurrence is not going to happen, which is when the pictures are taken by Teresa, but they say now nothing, it's over, the conflict is over, these pictures are out of date. The Prague Spring has already happened and Teresa's pictures are too late. Again, there's another thing where we have about Karenin and paradise. So where he says, Kundera argues that no one can give another person the gift of the ideal, but an animal can, which is exactly what Teresa's dog Karenin does. Animals did not get expelled from paradise, Kundera says, and dog time cannot be plotted along a straight line. Dog time is circular, like the hands of a clock, and because of this, Karenin lives a life based on repetition. Karenin brings this repetition to Teresa in the form of his loyalty and love, which are Teresa's main, perhaps only source of happiness in life. So, Kundera claims that people can retain at least a glimmer of that paradisiac ideal if they live in the country, as Thomas and Teresa do at the end of the novel, surrounded by nature and animals, and experiencing the recurring seasons. So the cyclical nature of seasons and wildlife mimics that of paradise, bringing people as close to happiness as humanly possible. So once again, he tries to say that repetition is where happiness exists. So human time does not turn in a circle, it runs in a straight line. That is why man cannot be happy. Happiness is the longing for repetition. This general unhappiness and unfulfilled desire for repetition is reflected throughout the unbearable lightness of being, which Kundera then maintains is proof positive that life occurs only once. Okay. Maybe I'll stop this screen share with this before we go to lightness and heaviness. Hi, Ranjini. Good to see you here. Yes. Would you like to add anything, Shamal Raoji? You wanted to add the definition of existentialism.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That existentialism is a philosophical movement that stresses the individual's unique position as a self-determining agent responsible for making meaningful, authentic choices in a universe seen as purposeless or irrational. That means an individual is uniquely placed to determine himself.
Correct.
And he is responsible for making a meaningful and authentic choices. That means the word centers around the individual here, existentialism. And there are several philosophers, Sartre, Marcel, Jasper, Heidegger. They brought out this. And
Correct.
as far as essentialism is concerned, you wonderfully explained the example of knife there. It is a philosophy, a doctrine that the inward or essential nature of most things is invariable. The inward or essential nature of many things are invariable. They don't change, as opposed to the properties that are accidental, phenomenal, and illusory. You have well explained when you say a knife with a wooden handle, or you see, handle can be something. The essential nature is of to cut the sharpness and other things. So that is essentialism. Essentialism, that means its basic nature is to cut.
Correct.
That is essential quality of that. And it is the inward essential. And it's same with the human beings also. That is what they exist.
Yeah. So that kind of, I don't know, does it kind of match with some of our lot of our Indian philosophy and thought process also, right? Of yesteryears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are certain basic qualities. There are certain qualities that are imposed.
Correct.
Human being has got certain basic qualities, and by the influence of societal influence, he can have certain qualities are imposed on him. But essential qualities do not change.
Correct.
That is about that is what I understand about essentialism.
Correct.
And existence, the individual asserts his right to be. He is self-determining agent to responsible, but he is making a meaningful living. That is existentialism. These are the two different things.
But Frederick Nietzsche, otherwise what I read was, so he has this concept of eternal return.
I'm coming to that point. And the book centers, opening line itself says, the book, in the first chapter, the idea of eternal return is a mysterious one. First sentence. And Nietzsche has often perplexed other philosophers with it. Very first, it is the precursor of this book. For the
Correct.
This Kundera disputes that. Eternal return. But in the end, actually, he accepts eternal return as you just shown it in the slide, that causes happiness. Repetition causes happiness.
Correct.
But once he disputes that in the opening and then subsequently accepts it, that is something perhaps I have to read again to understand.
Yeah, has to read again to understand.
But he is not a question of rejecting. He says the idea of eternal return is a mysterious one. He suspects it's not clear to him. And Nietzsche has often to think that everything returns as we once experienced it, and that itself recurs ad infinitum. What does this mad myth signify? First
What does
paragraph. I read it thrice actually to go to what
Yeah.
actually he's trying to say, what Nietzsche says and other things. Because the premise of the book is fixed in the very first page itself. First paragraph of the book
Correct,
itself.
correct.
It's a very weighty opening. As you used in your mail also, you have set a tone with the word repulsion.
Correct.
That holds back and drives us away. Actually. And you went in further with 4 W's: why, what, who, and when, about the subject of repulsion. 4 W's. And I found it, no, there is something. Because she's so serious in the mail means I must have missed something. I read again.
Correct.
A few pages I read in the book. As I said in the before meeting, I woke up and found out in my notes and other things. No, there is weight in the book. We can't just reject or get repelled by it. An area that it is like this, but an area that repels, set it aside and go ahead.
Correct, correct. That is true. Yeah, but yeah, like it was a light read. It wasn't very difficult as a story. It is not. It moved quite fast.
There is not
so
much
so
in
it was
story.
okay. Yeah,
exactly correct.
No,
there is not much in story.
Correct.
There is some war, actually, 2 lovers, that fellow philanders and all those things. But the way he presents it and several aspects he touches, several writers are brought in. And with her music is explained. And somewhere he explains the word compassion.
Correct. Yes, yes.
If
so
it is, I really like it.
I couldn't, I reduced the slides. I didn't do it so much, but compassion also was one more thing I wanted to talk
Beautiful
about. How the
word,
language,
how
he talks about.
Exactly. If it is from Latin, what does it mean? And if it is in other languages, say Czech, Polish, German, or Swedish, what does it mean? And definitely he has got mastery on these two things. Otherwise, how can he explain to us?
Correct, correct.
Similarly, there is another word, kish. I know whether I'm pronouncing it correct.
Yeah, correct.
That also he has explained actually, and in number of times it comes. And I had to, what actually the specific mean? It says art, objects are designed considered to be in poor taste because of excessive garishness or sentimentality, but sometimes appreciated in an ironic or knowing way. That's what I found. Eternal return, compassion, kiss. And basically, what you call the terra firma on which he bases his story is not easy, actually. Yeah, exactly. And definitely it is at an intellectual level. And then it is a non-linear, another problem. The story is, he takes it ahead, he's already over everything. And then he comes back. They crushed it under that, what I call the truck. Correct. Then I thought the story is over. But again, he reverses how it happens. It's a non-linear. To understand linear stories easier than understanding non-linear stories. That is what
and two different points of view also. Suddenly the story, and then someone comes from outside and starts telling the story.
I recollected in our book actually. If you remember, Russian classic, the writer himself reads the mind of that animal, and that says. Remember, we did it in Anna Karenan, I think actually.
Yeah, Tolstoy.
We did that.
Yes. He reads the mind of the dog and puts it in the book. Likewise, in this
Anna Karenina.
Yes.
They go hunting and there are.
Very correct, Sulika madam. You are right.
Correct. Yeah.
In this case, if you connect, actually, he reads the minds of the characters, his own characters. It's a very difficult experiment.
Very difficult. It's jarring also at times, I felt. I don't know.
It's difficult to follow. That is.
Yeah. Tulika, hi. Good to have you.
Hi. I just thought I'll catch the tail end of the conversation.
Yes.
Because even I haven't finished reading the book. So that was,
How are you feeling now? All good?
Yeah. Much better. Almost good as new.
Okay, so we have that last bit about heaviness and lightness. Let me share screen.
One more point I'll share about Kish, madam.
Yes. Shaman.
My enemy is Kish. He says in a sentence, not communism.
Correct.
This book has got political overtones in the madam.
So this is,
Come.
again, that is another point which I forgot to include in the slide. Let me just pull it up, Shamal Raji.
Please,
But
please.
one very interesting thing I wanted to share, I somehow forgot to put it into the slide. So there was this beautiful review of the book, which has been written, but by a Westerner.
Acha.
In this journal called New Criterion. Okay, it's a very small review which he's written. But one interesting thing about Milan Kundera is he's very, very staunch communist, actually. Despite all that happened or whatever, he wanted reform in communism, but he is not against communism.
Ah.
Okay, so this reviewer doesn't like that. Okay. So the way he writes the book, of course, he tells about how definitely Kundera is a wonderful writer and all that. He talks about it, and then he draws this. He writes this paragraph. Let me just read it out. Kundera's works draw heavily on his experiences under totalitarian rule, weaving in philosophy, psychological conjecture, and autobiography to portray communism's dehumanizing effect on the individual. Yet, writes Kimball is the reviewer, Kundera also maintains a fundamentally equivocal attitude towards the West. When asked if he thought private life was less threatened in the West than in the East, he replied that there was no difference. He compared the intrusiveness of the Western media to the activities of secret police. In Unbearable Lightness, he equated the sentimental response of a US senator watching children playing to the smile communist statesmen beamed from the height of the reviewing stand to the identically smiling citizens in the parade below. So Kimball criticizes Kundera for wanting to have it both ways by drawing what Kimball calls an absurd parallel between the failings of totalitarianism and those of democracy. Kundera has won Western admirers on the far left. In so doing, he has sacrificed the chance to be truly great for the chance to be ideologically popular.
Yes. Very forceful review. Very correct.
Very, very forceful review.
How can you take two stands? On one side, you encourage communism, which is diametrically opposite to this democracy and other things.
He says that there should be a reformed communism.
Communism is communism. Whatever reform, you can't get away from the core value it holds close. How can is it possible?
Which is what he means by the sentence which you read out also, the quote. I don't like the kish in communism, but he likes communism.
No presumptiveness, no what I call mediocre and other. So I don't like it. That means he relishes core communism in its true colors.
Correct. He is a communist. He relishes the communism.
Communist.
Yeah. But after he was expelled from the Communist Party, but he didn't, I think he didn't go back to it when they called him once again to join or whatever. He was joined them. Yeah, because he was still wanted to be, he wanted those reforms, which they will not, of course, agree for. So it goes on. Very interesting, but
there is he compromised. I don't know, because these are the things that go above our head: ideology, political, and the contextual reference he wrote. And there is a big body of work. He has written so many books.
Correct. But he maintained a very low profile after going to France. So either in communism or anything, nothing. He kept a very, very low profile after that.
Maybe because he was taken to task, he has given away some communist name and other things.
Maybe. Or maybe he was just disillusioned by the whole thing.
Possible, because writers are by nature very sensitive people now, madam. Very, very sensitive. Otherwise, they can't bring out those things. The subtle way of putting things. They finish it with product that comes, that touches our heart.
Correct.
How can they bring if they are not creative and sensitive? Rather, more sensitive than the reader. That's what I feel. A writer must be more sensitive than the reader he caters to. Then only he can touch them.
Correct.
For that matter, a single sentence we will go on thinking, ruminate over the day. How nicely he has written. How single sentence, few words, as I just said actually.
Yeah.
My enemy is KISS, not communism. Well, few words, but it makes you think like anything. And we have spoken for 10 minutes on the subject.
Correct.
That is the always there, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Should I share the screen, Shamal Raoji?
Please do, ma'am.
And anything in, okay, I'll finish then once again. Yeah. So the next concept, which the theme of the book was lightness versus heaviness. So Kundera explains that Nietzsche's view of eternal return was the heaviest of burdens. So the heaviness implied in Nietzsche's understanding of eternal return makes the concept appear unbearable and negative. Yet Kundera isn't convinced. He says, is heaviness truly deplorable and lightness splendid? He asks. So to answer the question, Kundera references Parmenides, a Greek philosopher from the 5th century BCE, who saw the world as divided into opposites, lightness and dark, cold and warmth, being and non-being, etc. So Parmenides argued that one half of such oppositions is positive and the other half is negative. So Kundera claims the division of these pairs into positive and negative poles is childishly simple except for one difficulty. Which one is positive? Weight or lightness? So for Parmenides, the answer to this question was simple. So he felt lightness has a positive value and weight heaviness is a negative one. But Kundera argues that it's more complicated than that. Kundera calls the lightness and weight opposition mysterious and ambiguous, suggesting that it's not actually possible to separate these two seemingly opposites into such a clear dichotomy. So through this analysis of lightness, weight, and their interconnection, Kundera ultimately argues that all similar, dichotomies are false as well. So in the book, Sabina is represented as light. She's sexually liberated, adverse to commitment. She goes out of her way to rid her life of family and any other heavy relationships to keep herself as light as possible. And conversely, Teresa is shown as a heavy person, both figuratively and literally. She values love and commitment, especially to Thomas, and she carries her entire life around in an enormous suitcase. So the suitcase is symbolic of weight, heaviness. So
Weight.
Teresa, yeah. So Teresa is also light at times, where she flirts with her customers in the bar, etc. And at the same time, they show Thomas and Sabina also as heavy at times. So Kundera ultimately tries to reject the theory of eternal return and argues that life only occurs once and is therefore it's overwhelmingly light. He does not imply that life is therefore meaningless. In fact, he says because it's light, the unbearable lightness of being is where it comes. So on the contrary, life is at once heavy and light, and it's pointless to try and separate the two. Yeah. Feel free to unmute yourself and share anything if you want to about this. Tulika, did you enjoy the read?
Not really.
Not
Actually,
really.
I was.
How much have you finished? How much do you have left?
I have I'm around the midpoint thing. I don't know. Again, maybe I think I was not in the right frame of mind to read
No,
something.
you were in the right frame of mind.
I was. I just found there was.
So
I don't know. I couldn't enjoy the book. I didn't enjoy the book.
I didn't too. That's exactly. Actually, did you read? Did you get do you subscribe to the newsletter, the email one?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Did you read what I had written?
No, I think I haven't. I missed the letter.
So
okay.
I found it extremely repulsive. That's what I had written.
Oh my God. No, I didn't read those nights, but yeah.
But up to some probably 60-70% mark, I didn't really enjoy it. But I felt the last 30% made up a lot of what
Oh,
I felt I missed in the first 60-70%. When
okay,
you read the
okay.
last 30%, you
Possibly.
understand whatever you I don't know, it made me really change my view about the book. I'd say that.
Yeah.
But I persisted with reading.
And Shamal Raoji enjoyed everything.
And I found certain new
As
things.
always.
So my request to Tulika madam is to let her complete the remaining
Yes,
portion of the book.
please
Yeah.
do finish the book,
I
Tulika.
will.
And you already have a handle because we discussed about it. Madam has brought
Hmm.
several slides. You can keep them
I'll go
handy.
through it again.
Yes.
It is a heavy
Archana?
book and it is a classic book because he brings out
Yeah.
philosophy, political philosophy.
There was actually too much philosophy. I found it going slow. And I
Well,
was
agreed.
just that. Like you need to have a lot of time to enjoy the book because
Huh.
in
Mm.
everything it was just hard to wrap your head around the whole thing.
Correct.
Very,
Maybe
very correct.
so
And
I
the book
kind of
is physically small. It is around 300 pages.
exactly. That's what when I started off, I thought, Arey, this time I'm gonna finish so fast.
Exactly.
Yes.
I've done
But that is not
and
going to
now
be the case.
yeah, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't a
No.
tough read, but to actually digest and enjoy the whole thing, you needed to be 100% present.
Correct.
And
Exactly.
you very involved in the book.
Exactly.
Because
So
when the mail has come, I thought, how come it is so repulsive when I didn't find it that way?
how
Believe me,
did
early
it that
morning I
way?
woke up, I worked for a 1 hour homework I have done today. Why actually, what causes such repulsion in the book? And I found that the Philanthropist Thomas character, he creates a problem that is insulate, put him in a dark box and then read the book. That I felt it convinced actually. The philosophy, political philosophy, normal philosophy, and then Nietzsche and see so many words he has introduced, so many writers.
Mm.
He has brought in Beethoven, he has brought in
Correct.
Kafka. His canvas is a very wide canvas he
Tolstoy.
has written.
Mm.
Tolstoy. And he names this Anna Karenina Karenina. Dog's name is given as a
Yeah.
Karenina. And there is a pig also, that chief of the
Yeah.
village chief.
Correct.
And
Correct.
he touches animals. Like maybe at some points we may disagree, but to paint whole book, I will keep myself reserved. So I shall wish actually Tulika madam persist completing reading the book.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi,
And
Ranjini.
incidentally, I have put a review this link in the chat box I'm sending.
Okay.
Madam has referred. I also found this review very good.
Mm.
Okay. Is
Just
it from
Okay, sure.
Goodreads, Archana?
I have put it actually. Is the Nasimla
Oh.
Mambrol he has written actually.
Oh, okay. I've not.
Okay.
I think I've not written it.
This,
Oh.
and in one of his interviews, he has written about one writer, madam.
Oh. Okay.
Uh,
There was so
and
much
no, he
material.
has
I
brought
think
it,
I
he brought
thought I
it
had to stop after a point of time. I wanted to like stop because I think JSTOR had so many research articles about this. Then I went,
Yes.
everywhere you turn, there was so much. Finally, at a point, I was like, okay, let me stop. Otherwise, I'm never making a presentation. So,
That is the thing actually. One thing takes to another. That is
Another,
what I
exactly.
found in this book.
True. So much. Yes, Ranjini. Hi, Ranjini.
This is the book I was trying to. Let me stop after this.
Yeah.
This is Baldwin Habel. He has referred to him in one of his interviews.
What is the name of the author?
I am putting it in chat box, ma'am.
Okay.
Just give me a minute. With
Okay.
this I will.
Okay, literariness analysis. Okay, Nasimla.
I have put it here. And about him, he has written in the interview. One single book by Habel does more for people, for their freedom of mind, than all the rest of us with our actions, our gestures, our noisy protests. Then I searched and I found this book. It is a novella, very small book. If you find time, kindly read. Why this particular writer has been appreciated by Kundera, you will find. He has said it. One single book is enough if you read from this novel. Does more for people for their freedom of mind than all the rest of us with our actions, our gestures, our noisy protests. Okay, Ranjini madam may take over. She has lifted.
Yes. Yes. Hi, Ranjini.
Hi, Archana. So I told you I had this book at home and I thought, okay, this is the time to read it since you've selected it. And I also thought that it's not a very large book. I expected it to be a light book, but it's anything but light, as the title misleads you. I actually started listening to the audiobook and I was about, I would say 20-25% in, and I was telling my daughter who had this for her IB 12th standard book. I said, it seems to be going in the same circle over and over. Does anything else happen? And she's like, stop reading the book right now. And then for whatever reason, I didn't read it. But I did miss a little bit of your original initial presentation. I would like to see that. But the themes that this lightness versus heaviness, or the definition of compassion, and some of the other things that you've discussed, all that happens in the first 20%. So my question is, does anything really change in the next part of the book? Because it's just a lot of going back and forth between these two characters and their complicated relationship, and a lot of analysis of themselves. And of course, I think the point that he does discuss a lot of philosophy, and I did like that compassion definition based on two different languages, and also this lightness versus heaviness. But I think the book was very heavy. It was quite misleading. And also I agree, it's got so much press. I don't know what all awards it has won, but it's a title that is a very memorable title. And it's the title is easy to remember, but I don't know if I should go back and maybe, like you said, read only the last 30%, because I doubt much happens between 25 and 80%.
Correct. But much happens in the sense nothing happens, Ranjini. Even then also, I wouldn't say anything happens later on also. So the story is somewhat about the same things only. Probably towards the end it changes a bit, but otherwise it's nearly the same thing. But I don't know, somehow I felt the thought process behind, what they do, and her thinking of it, Karen in the dog's role, and the relationship that they share with the dog. And I don't know, somehow all those things kind of seem to make a lot of sense of the initial 60-70% of whatever I had read. I felt, at least I felt that. And if that hadn't happened, I would have felt I had wasted my time with the book, literally, So that
was it made into a movie?
It was, but we were just talking about that too. It was made into a movie, but Kundera decided after that the movie has nothing to do with the book. So despite Kundera being a part of the team which did the movie, so he has studied film in his university days. So he was a part of the team which was involved in making it into a movie, but still he wasn't very happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, if the movie goes along the lines of the book, it would just be round and round, like dog chasing its tail. It's just
exactly.
It's just one behind the other.
Because it's not basically, I think basically it's not meant as a story. It's more there about him. So Nietzsche had these things. Okay, Nietzsche had as he was an existential philosopher, but he had a lot of controversial and different points of view, and many of his points of view and thought processes were contested by people who came later on in the school of existentialism. So I think the whole book is based on this concept that Nietzsche's theory of eternal return is not right. It's not true, or it's not right. And it doesn't mean that eternal return is a heavy thing. Eternal return could actually be the light thing, and living linearly could actually be the heavy thing. That was the whole concept behind the book. So I don't heavy.
In a way, the book contests even Hindu philosophy.
Yeah, it does. It does contest.
That is the thing, the point. Because we believe in rebirth.
We believe in rebirth. Correct.
And the book questions that. There is no question of repetition, it says.
Yeah. So I watched a few, there's some very, very interesting philosophy videos nowadays, on these, on YouTube. in a nice animated fashion, easy to understand way and all that. But still, it's quite heavy. So like, so one of the examples given was if there is this person who decides, who has to make the decision between either going and joining the army and fighting a war, or staying back at home and looking after his mother. So which is the right decision? Living for the greater good, but his role might be a very small thing in the army, or living for a small good, only for his mother's good, but his role in his mother's life would have been a very huge thing. So which is the right decision to take and all? Oh God, it was little crazy, but yeah, so it's something is the same as what Thomas decides, whether he's supposed to live with Teresa or live alone. Now, the thing is that whatever you decide, it's the right decision. So there's no actual way of saying which is the right decision, which is the wrong decision. So that's the basis behind existentialism, while maybe essentialism says that you are born to do this, so you're supposed to do this. Like what Krishna says, Arjuna, you were born to fight, you're a warrior. So why are you thinking about it? This is your duty.
Do your duty.
Do your duty. But essentialism, that's essentialism, while existentialism says there's no duty. Whatever you choose as your duty is your duty. So
Exactly.
Well, that's also what the Bhagavad Gita says, that you can choose this path or that path, but your job is to do. Like you can wander around, but at the end of the day, you are supposed to act in some way, whether you choose this path or that path, and that's why Hinduism allows you many
Krishna
pathways.
says very clearly to Arjuna, right? You're supposed to fight the war. So
that is your duty.
That is your duty. You're a Kshatriya. You have to fight the war.
Yes.
So this might be your brothers, it might be your family, but you have to fight the war.
As you just said, the knife, it's the sharpness. That is its essential feature.
Yeah.
As the Kshatriya, have to fight. That's all.
Yeah.
That's what he says. Essentialism.
So that's what he kind of, so entire existentialism challenges this concept, but in existentialism also you have this concept of eternal return by Nietzsche, which is challenged in this book. So, yeah.
But after so much discussion, I feel, madam, did the writer try to communicate so much in so small a book? So many things.
Yeah, no, so it's difficult, I think. But considering that, I think he's pulled off a good job.
There are politics, there is religion, there is philosophy, so many things he has added, so many things.
Correct.
And he has referred to music, he has referred to writers. And there are certain statements, actually, he stands by them. Somewhere he says, what is that? There are 4 great novelists. He sits in judgment about novelists.
Correct.
There are 4 great novelists: Kafka, Brosh, I think I pronounced it correctly, Musil, Gomabrod. I call them the Pleiad. That means his judgments also he communicates through the book. Small a book, so much is given, so much concentrated wisdom or knowledge is passed on to us as a reader.
Yeah.
Maybe that has caused the repulsion. I'll go back to the first word of yours.
I think my repulsion was his philandering was too much on my face, I think.
Yes,
so
that I initially
I felt
that is why I suggested a solution. Okay, let us insulate that particular portion, skip those paragraphs or sentences. Let us get into the mainstream. That is what I suggested. That is what I did for that matter. Because I felt it was diversionary.
Yeah.
Because Kundera is a very big writer. How come he is getting stuck up in these small things?
But even that I felt I could understand towards the end. Like,
yes.
Yeah,
yes,
why did
yes,
I feel that repulsion? Why was that thought process coming to me? Why did I feel repulsed by it? So exactly. I felt like I found the answer in those last few pages when I read them.
Let me share one more thing. Recently, I went to the library and brought a book. Very new novelist. I have never heard about her. Something came to hand, I brought it. And very 30-40 pages, she only highlighted this. I said, let me close, let me not read. Later, because it caters to certain people of the, what I call readers, segments. So, not to all. So I said, I will not read this book. There is no meaning in wasting. Let me get back to reading Milan Kundera in the light of Madam's email. But I will request, what is that, Lutika to read again. Tulika madam.
Yeah, and Ranjini,
will.
you should also finish it.
And you have come to a conclusion that it contests our Hindu philosophy. So that
Yeah.
gives us one more reason that we have to read the book. How come he
Yes.
can contest us?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tulika and Ranjini, please do finish it.
Yeah.
We need to be in the good frame of mind for
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't read
It is a
as fiction.
challenging.
I think the fiction
It is a
element is
demanding
still
read.
quite
It is
weak
a,
in the book. It's the
Fiction.
non-fiction and the
There is
Yeah,
no,
correct.
yeah. There's
There
barely
is no
any
fiction.
narrative. There
Yeah,
is
there is no
narrative.
No narrative,
Yeah.
nothing.
It's a
narrative
book.
doesn't hold interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a book on philosophy. So you have to read it like that.
Correct.
Instead of thinking that there'll be a story and
No
Yeah,
story.
yeah. There's no
Yeah.
story. If story that the what we read before was the previous book was so good, Blind Assassin.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The
that
story
was
holds your
amazing.
hand and
Yeah.
takes you all along. Here it's
Yeah.
not. It is almost non-fiction, fiction, 50-50, this book.
Yeah, correct.
The
I-
amount that I've read, there's nothing happening. She comes to him, he doesn't want her to, then they go away together, then she comes back, then he follows her. I was like, what is happening? It was just so like by the
That's
end of it,
correct.
I was like, enough.
Yeah.
And he keeps going back to that mistress. I was like, why is he doing that? He can't make up his
Ah,
mind. Should
correct.
that kind
True.
of very off-putting. Anyway.
Okay. So there were some quotes I had taken. There were actually so many quotes. I just took a few, or else we'll never finish today. Anyone whose goal is something higher must expect someday to suffer vertigo. What is vertigo? Fear of falling? No. Vertigo is something other than fear of falling. It is the voice of the emptiness below us which tempts and lures us. It is the desire to fall, against which, terrified, we defend ourselves. When the heart speaks, the mind finds it indecent to object. Love is the longing for the half of ourselves we have lost. But when the strong were too weak to hurt the weak had to be strong enough to leave. This is when she leaves him in Switzerland and a person who longs to leave the place where he lives is an unhappy person. A single metaphor.
Just excuse
Yeah.
madam. Previous quote, could it be autobiographical?
Yeah, it could be. Very true. He leaves Czechoslovakia for France, right? Yeah.
France, yes, yes.
Mm.
Thomas, sometimes he appears to be Kundera.
Mm. It could also be different, Shamal Rabji. Maybe he was unhappy in France.
Could be. Either way.
Yeah.
Could be. Could be.
Yeah.
Okay.
A single metaphor can give birth to love. Love are like empires. When the idea they are founded on crumbles, they too fade away. The only relationship that can make both partners happy is one in which sentimentality has no place and neither partner makes any claim on the life and freedom of the other. I could completely not wrap my head around this, so I put it here. The goals we pursue always veiled. A girl who longs for marriage longs for something she knows nothing about. The boy who hankers after fame has no idea what fame is. The thing that gives our every move its meaning is always totally unknown to us. This also I felt could be very veiled reference to communism or his, yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't put a lot, so yes, there are actually a lot more quotes.
So
I
many
didn't add.
quotes.
So many.
So many pearls of wisdom.
Yes. So very nice. Thanks, Tulika and Ranjini and all for joining. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about the next book that we can choose. I think I'll stop share now and then